Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, or you can call me E-Soup. We are back to QJJ again, for better or for worse, after what happened last time. We will be reading chapters 98 to 102 today. There is a link to trigger warnings in the description if you need it. Please go ahead and like the stream. And yeah, so tell me how you're feeling after Monday's stream, because it was a lot. And hi Wolf, you said you're sorry to everyone who was offed by the audio drama clip that you posted on Discord. I saw that. I was one of those people. It was the scene where we literally ended our last stream on. Those voice actors were voice acting. It was a lot. I've heard some other, I've started the audio drama for QJJ, and, you know, the story is very intense at the beginning, so you can imagine how it is. And they are acting in that audio drama. It's great, honestly. I need to... it takes me a long time to get through audio dramas, but I need to catch up with it eventually. Oh, Blue, you're half glad you didn't have the time to check it out? Yeah, no, that's fair. I might save that for later. By the way, just before I start, I apologize today if I'm using the webcam again, and I have stuff, I stream from a laptop, and I have like a hub where you can plug a bunch of things into it, and I think it's not enjoying the amount of things that are plugged in. So I was getting ready for the stream, and my camera was going in and out. So if you get like a split second of a black screen sometimes, and then I come back, I apologize. I think I fixed it. I just had to fiddle with how it was plugged in, but I can't guarantee that I won't like do that again. So, one day there will be a day when like nothing goes wrong, but I don't know if today is that day. So yeah, we just had that insanely depressing but beautiful scene that we ended on, where Xiaoqia said, "I promise Lanzhou will never hurt again." It was a lot. There was art and everything. We had so much art last stream. I was really surprised, like, every time I would come upon art, and I was like, I'm not used to there being this much art in such a short period of time in one of these novels. But they were all significant moments, so it makes sense. So I'm very excited for today. I'm also nervous. I don't know what we could possibly be getting into at this point. And as the chapter title that we're on says, Xiaoqia and Shen Zitun are on the run. So yeah, I'm gonna get started. We're on page 259 for chapter 98, On the Run. The rain stopped at the first light of dawn, and the world appeared as a vast, murky expanse under the interplay of light and darkness behind the clouds. Qi Juyin trod through the mud as she stepped off the drill grounds. She secured her armed guards and watched her deputy general, a man named Qi Wei, ride into the camp. Strong and sturdy, but cautious by nature, he could hoist an axe on the battlefield and hold a needle off it. He was held in high esteem among the troops. Qi Wei dismounted and nodded to the soldiers along the road as they greeted him. He headed straight to Qi Juyin's side. "Marshal, we've received news." "Chudu or Bianjun?" Qi Juyin asked. "Both." Qi Wei wasn't a tall man. He looked around, then reported. Chudu was caught in a sudden storm and was entirely cleaned out. The second young master of the Xiao clan fled in a hurry with 20,000 soldiers from the imperial army. They have already arrived at the border of Zhongbo. Looks like he's headed for Cizhou. Unruffled, Qi Juyin tightened her arm guard. A hint of a smile tugged her lips as she bit down on the rope. That lad sure runs fast. First, there was the adulteration of the military provisions, and now this hunt for Xiao Qiye. The Prince of Li Bei will surely lose his temper this time. Keeping pace with Qi Juyin as she walked, Qi Wei said, "If Li Bei revolts, we'll have to station additional garrison troops in the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo, and the Zhongbo troops will fall under the marshal's command." Qi Juyin tugged on her outer robe. Zhongbo is a big place. Even if all the soldiers there could be transferred to my command, I don't have the nerve to accept. What's happening in Chudu isn't urgent. First, tell me what happened to the garrison troops of the Bianjun Commandery. Lu Guangbai fought in ambush all the way into Biansha territory. Oh, sorry, that was a question. Lu Guangbai fought in ambush all the way into Biansha territory? A hesitance crossed Qi Wei's rugged face. "Marshal, General Lu disregarded military orders and chased the Biansha horsemen across the border. I suspect..." He fell silent, unwilling to speak the words. The military provisions were reduced by half this year. Bianjun's in for a tough time holding out with just that, Qi Juyin said. I've already signed a memorandum of debt with the Yan clan of Hezhou under my father's name. The money was meant to buy grains for the Bianjun garrison troops. So what is it that you suspect? I won't hear it without proof. Qi Wei knew Qi Juyin valued her generals and had always been even-handed in meting out reward and punishment. She would never punish them for simply voicing their suspicions. But he had noticed something odd when he went to Bianjun to scout, and now his misgivings were roused. Not daring to conceal anything, he truthfully replied, "Marshal, I wouldn't dare speak without proof. I went to Bianjun to learn what had happened after the ambush. Not only did General Lu not return to camp, he even took the garrison troops from the beacon towers." Qi Juyin stopped in her tracks and looked at Qi Wei. He took the garrison troops from the beacon towers? Hi, vase of peonies. Qi Wei nodded, but before he could go into more detail, they heard a commotion close by. Both turned and saw the guards stopping a sedan with intricately carved borders from entering the camp. When the guards refused them entry, Yingxi yanked aside the curtain personally and announced in a shrill voice, "Don't you know who I am? Why are you stopping my sedan? I'm the military inspector dispatched by His Majesty himself in Chudu. Go announce my arrival, quick. Tell Marshal Qi that I have something important to speak to her about." Watching this from afar, Qi Juyin murmured to Qi Wei, "Tell him I'm busy, and I don't have time to see him. Every one of these eunuchs from Chudu is the same. Just offer him good food and wine. Tell him to keep his mouth shut and not to cause trouble. I'm going to the Bianjun Commandery. Lu Guangbai is not a deserter. If any from Chudu ask, tell them I'm not around. No more than that. It's all troubled waters over in the capital. Keep an eye on my father, too. If he tries to send a message to Chudu, intercept it and tell him to behave himself." Qi Wei had more to say, but Qi Juyin had already swung herself effortlessly atop the horse. Before she left, she turned back to Qi Wei. "Things in Chudu will take at least half a month to settle. No doubt the wedding next month will be delayed. Remove all that red silk at home and store it for now. That stuff costs money." After saying her piece, she led her men to skirt around Yingxi's sedan and rode straight for the Bianjun Commandery. Shen Zichuan drank the medicine, and his illness gradually showed signs of improvement. The Imperial Army continued marching northeast. The pair of them would have to think of a way to convince Zizhou's prefect, Zhou Gui, to let them pass through. But before that, they had to shake off the pesky and persistent 8th Grade Battalion troops pursuing them. It's Han Jin who's hounding us. Tan Tai Hu held his blade as he sat huddled on the rock. If we can't send him packing before we arrive in Suzhou, he'll use a deployment order from Chudu to force Zhou Gui to seal off the city. We'll be trapped in Zhongbo without a path of retreat. Xiao Qie folded his arms and said nothing. A rudimentary map was laid out before him. Xiao Qie wasn't afraid of facing Han Jin, but he had to consider the timing as well. The longer this dragged on, the worse it would be for the Imperial Army. It was only because Chudu was in a state of chaos that Qi Juyin hadn't deployed troops to hunt him down. Once the waters calmed and the capital had a hand free to order Qi Juyin to pursue them, these 20,000 soldiers of the Imperial Army would be on a collision course with the wall of Qidong armor. The difficulty isn't in the fighting, but how quickly we can do it. Shen Zichuan's pale face had yet to regain its color. He picked up a stone and drew a few lines in the dirt on the ground. Han Jin dared chase us this far because he has Dancheng at his back. To the 8th Grade Battalions, the door to the granary of Dancheng is wide open. They're not worried about food and clothing. Our 20,000 men ran all the way here without stopping for breath, and we have no provisions to sustain us. If we want to reach Libei via Zizhou, this is our most pressing issue. Tan Tai Hu still wasn't used to looking at Shen Zichuan straight on. He fell silent for a moment, then glanced at Xiao Qie. Without glancing at him, Xiao Qie said, "If you have something to say, say it." Tan Tai Hu shifted on the rock. Pointing at Shen Zichuan's scratches on the ground, he said, "We're old acquaintances with Suzhou. Can't we ask Zhou Gui to lend us some provisions under the pretext that they hadn't yet received the news from Chudu?" "No," said Shen Zichuan, dropping the stone. "At this juncture, any action will be seen as taking sides. Zhou Gui may not intend to, but no matter why he does it, in Chudu's eyes, he will be a traitor who provided aid to rebel forces. Once we pass through Zizhou, he will be taken into custody in Chudu to be impeached and punished. Zhou Gui has a family. He'll never agree to this." Ding Tao looked up from his book. "Chen Ge went to prepare the military provisions some time ago, didn't he? He must be rushing back to us now." "The military provisions he prepared have already been dispatched to Libei. It's the Libei armored cavalry's food at the front line. There's nothing left to fill the stomachs of the Imperial Army." Xiao Qie squatted and examined the map. Even if he and Gujian come, they won't be able to bring much in the way of food. As the saying went, food and fodder should go before troops and horses. 6 years ago, Li Bei and Qidong had so swiftly beaten back the Biansha horsemen because their enemies had no reserve supplies and couldn't afford to fight a war of attrition. Now, the Imperial Army, caught in a similar dilemma, likewise couldn't afford to fight a war of any length. Overtaking Suzhou might be an option, but it was certainly a bad one. They had spent close to 100,000 taels of silver fostering their relationship with Zhou Gui, all as a safeguard for the future. Turn back and attack Dancheng. Tan Tai Hu pondered the situation. They have a granary. We won't linger in the city. Just get in, take the grain, and leave. We can negotiate everything else with Zhou Gui when we arrive at Suzhou. Um, Blue, Tantai Hu is the one who, like, picked a fight with Shen Zichuan, because of who his father is and everything. And um, then Xiao Qie was like, "You're kicked out of the Imperial Army." And then later he brought him back. I think there's someone. I feel like there was a mention somewhere, Vase, of somebody who takes care of Tantai Hu's kids when he's away. I I don't know if I'm imagining that, but I feel like there was something about like we'll get so and so to like watch your kids. I I don't know. For some reason I remember that. Um but yeah, I kind of like Tantai Hu being around now. He's interesting. No. Shen Zichuan sighed softly. Direct military routes connect Dancheng to both Chuancheng and Chudu. Turning back now will give Chudu time to deploy the rest of the 8 great battalions. The march back will waste our time and sap our energy, and we may not be able to take the city with the necessary speed. Tantai Hu burned with humiliation at having both his proposals vetoed by Shen Zichuan. He rubbed his hands together and said nothing more. His elder brother, Tantai Long, had been a brave man and a general, but Tantai Hu had had no one to teach him this kind of strategy. Yet though he was embarrassed and awkward, Shen Zichuan's logic had already won him over. He wasn't an unreasonable man. At the very least, he was willing to admit he was a bore. Xiao Qie seemed to sense his thoughts. He lifted a hand to pat Tantai Hu on the back and said nonchalantly, "We can't attack Dancheng because of the time constraint, but it is a solid idea. In the past, you only ever fought against the 8 great battalions on the streets of Chudu. Now that we've left, if there's something you don't know, just ask. There will be plenty of moments in the future where you'll need to lead troops and make decisions, and you won't have Lord Shen around every time to give you pointers. Lao Hu, the sea of learning knows no shore. If you're willing to take the plunge and have fun in spite of this, you'll have a bright future ahead of you." Shen Zichuan left the muddy soil scrawled into a mess and looked up at the sun. Han Jin is from Chudu. He was only accustomed to riding horses on the hunting grounds. He won't have the stamina to catch up to us quickly. We can lay an ambush here and plunder Han Jin's provisions. Xiao Qie surveyed their surroundings. We won't need 20,000 men for that. He's afraid of you. Shen Zichuan's fingertips were stained with mud. He's been timid in his pursuit all this while. If we want him to fall for an ambush, we'll need bait. I'll keep 500 men and wait here for him. There's the Silt River to the east, and it's backed by mountains on 2 sides and close to the forest on one. Lao Hu will lead 2,000 men to lay an ambush there. Xiao Qie wiped the mud off Shen Zichuan's fingertip. Tonight, Ding Tao will bring some men to the town along the way for food and wine. Say that the Imperial Army has fled here, and that everyone is demoralized because I'm too poor to feed them and can't get out of Zhongbo. Many of the soldiers are deserting. Han Jin was young, and he had last interacted with Xiao Qie when the public ditches were clogged. Shen Zichuan was right. He was afraid of Xiao Qie. In fact, there were very few among the noble young masters in Chudu who weren't. Xiao Qie's physique and personality had made him a local tyrant long before the autumn hunt. But the coup at the Nanlin hunting grounds had been a watershed moment. For lawful sons like Han Jin, who weren't the eldest in their family, it should have been a breeze to become officials with their fathers and elder brothers looking out for them. They seemed, on the surface, no different from Xiao Qie, yet they had never stood out the way Xiao Qie did. Han Jin would pursue Xiao Qie with caution, but he wouldn't pass up the opportunity to defeat him if he could, as long as Xiao Qie revealed a weakness. Other than that, Shen Zichuan considered before he said to Ding Tao, You also have to say that I don't get along with the Marquis, and have had so many disputes with him on the road that we're going our separate ways. We're in a difficult position, both internally and externally. Xiao Chia agreed, baring his teeth. Make it as tragic as possible. Ding Tao scribbled it all down in his little book. Tantai Hu wasn't convinced. Can Taozi act? Say it for us here first. Ding Tao rubbed his eyes and held up the book to read. Oh, woe is me. Misfortune has befallen my master, who is pursued relentlessly by the 8th grade battalions, yet has nary a copper in his pockets for porridge. We fled Chudu in such haste, we didn't shutter the shops, nor take money from the manors. Our pockets are as empty as our bellies, and to think my master still owes the jewelry shop on Shenwu Street several thousand taels of silver. Guess there's no way he's paying that back. He continued with great feeling. Lord Shen has fallen severely ill after getting chilled in the rain, yet we have no money even to call for a physician. Alack, when poverty comes to the door, love flies out the wind. Anyway, Lord Shen has forsaken my master. I can't. He's going on for so long. Oh my god. Our soldiers and horses are on the run with hollow bellies. I'm so hungry my stomach aches with it. I couldn't take it a moment longer, so I took a few brothers with me to rob some houses and cobble together enough money for a meal. Look, we were all good men from decent families, yet we've been forced to this extremity. We're just padding our bellies a little before we go seek refuge with Han Jin in Dancheng. Oh, but Han Jin is wonderful. He has money and grain aplenty. Only by throwing in with him will we have any hope of a future. The future is... Your master thinks that was pretty well said, Xiao Chia cut in. Lao Hu, strip off his little robe and smear his face with mud. Give him 3 strings of copper coins and send him on his way. No need to eat and drink in a tavern anymore. You can beg for alms along the streets in town. Why are you looking so pitifully at Lanzhou? You're right, Henry. It's the beggar gang now. Xiao Chia and his 20,000 beggars. Blue. Oh my god. Thank you, Ding Tao, for the humor break. It was much needed. Anna, Xiao Chia's name is in red underline in his little notebook. Yeah. Wolf, you're correct. Ding Tao knows who to appeal to already. Okay. Well, we're on page 269 for chapter 99, which is called Thank You Gift. Han Jin captured several deserters from the Imperial Army one after another. All of them were filthy, and so famished they looked sallow and emaciated. After making some inquiries, he learned of the Imperial Army's desperate predicament. Still, he didn't dare advance without careful consideration. 20,000 Imperial Army soldiers wasn't a small number. At every moment, he was weighing his chances of winning against Xiao Chia in a head-on battle. He sat inside the tent and stared down the deserters. The Imperial Army's performance at the Nanlin hunting grounds was extraordinary, and they killed so many of our people when they were vying with us for the city gate patrol back then. You followed Xiao Chia into defecting from the capital, and marched with him until now. How could you simply turn your backs on him at the drop of a hat? Your Excellency, there's nowhere to go, said the deserter kneeling at Han Jin's feet. We fled all the way here, just to be left stranded far from civilization, with no villages or shops in sight. We have neither food nor shelter. Suzhou stands in front of us, and the Chidong garrison troops wait to the south. It's only a matter of time before we're surrounded and caught. Han Jin thought carefully for a moment. Are there many deserters? When I fled, there were a few hundred others, the man answered. The Imperial army is duckweed in a muddy ditch. It will scatter at the first strike. A single blow would end them. Xiao Jie has no plan for this? Han Jin wondered. I heard he's strict about military discipline. The soldiers under his command are all very afraid of him. Your Excellency doesn't know this, but... The deserter, who had been speaking a while, swallowed thickly and continued. Can you give me something to eat first? I ran the entire fucking way. My stomach's growling so loud I can't hear myself speak. Han Jin motioned for his men to hand him some rations, and the deserter began to gobble them down on the spot. Chewing, he said, They're so afraid of him. In the past, we brothers had nowhere to go in Chudu. We didn't have much choice but to do as he said. We ended up offending all the masters of the 8 great battalions. But now he's gone and become a traitor. How could we dare to keep following him? These deserters really did appear to be down and out. Moreover, they were all fugitives his own men had captured. Han Jin didn't think they were faking it. After making some careful mental calculations, he instructed his men to lead the deserters out, then invited his advisors into his tent to deliberate on strategy. Among the advisors was Gao Zhongxiong, the man who had taken the lead back when the Imperial College had rebuked the Xiande Emperor over Shen Zichuan's release from the Temple of Guilt. The demonstration had offended Pan Rugui, and Gao Zhongxiong had been thrown in prison with no one to vouch for him. He had since given up the idea of becoming a court official and thrown in his lot with Han Jin. He was a passionate scholar, full of patriotic fervor, and had always abhorred traitors to the state. Blue. Okay. Academy Award now. Agreed. Shen Wei, Pan Rugui, and their ilk were all men he held in contempt. And now, upon hearing that Xiao Jie had fled Chudu after assassinating the emperor himself, he was even more furious and unable to stand by. Gao Zhongxiong pointed to the map. Xiao Jie is already at the end of his rope. We cannot tolerate him running loose in Zhongbo. My lord has an army of strong men and sturdy horses, as well as the city of Dancheng to fall back on. In my opinion, there's no time to lose. We should deploy troops at once to pursue and engage the Imperial army. If we can capture Xiao Jie before he enters Cizhou, it would be a major accomplishment. Han Jin hesitated. But even with the desertions, Xiao Jie still has more than 10,000 men, and they're all real soldiers, battle-tested in the autumn hunt. If this is a trap... But the soldiers of the Imperial army are demoralized. They're not of one mind, Gao Zhongxiong countered. If Xiao Jie can't command them, there's no difference between 10,000 men and 1 man. They're just a motley crew of fugitives. They're nothing to worry about. The military commissioner has already pursued him all the way here. If we can't capture him quickly and bring him to justice, how will we explain to Chudu? Halfway convinced, Han Jin asked, But what should I do if he's allied with Cizhou's prefect, Zhou Gui, against me? My lord, Gao Zhongxiong said urgently, Zhou Gui is a man with the family. Would he cast aside a decent official position to plot a revolt with the traitor Xiao Jie? He wouldn't dare. Dispatch troops now, and we can catch Xiao Jie by surprise. If we press our advantage and seize victory, we'll return to Chudu in triumph. By this point, Han Jin had been sleeping in a tent for days and was covered in bug bites. His mind was on Chudu, where his eldest brother, Han Chung, had aided the Empress Dowager in taking control of the government. The glorious rise of the Han clan was within arm's reach. It was the perfect time for him to return and call up his friends for a lavish celebration. The longer he had to stay here, the more irritable he became. After hearing Gao Zhongxiong's argument, he weighed the pros and cons and promptly agreed. Oh, I cannot wait. I absolutely cannot wait. This is so, I'm so, this is such a fun trick. The ambush, like, just being like, oh yeah, the army's in terrible condition. Oh yeah, it'll be super easy to fight them. But vase of peonies, I do hear you wondering if Gao Zhongxiong is a plant, or he's not saying everything truthfully, maybe. The narrator did say that he hates traitors. But I know what you mean. I do wonder as well. Like, I don't trust anything. You can't trust anything. The next day, Han Jin woke early and led the troops out while there was still dew on the leaves. Based on information provided by the captured deserters, he followed the Imperial Army's trail to the forested area beside the Silt River. Fire pits were dug all over the forest, but he didn't see nearly enough to feed 20,000 people. Any doubts Han Jin had about those deserters' story evaporated. His spirits soared. Sitting astride his horse, he drew his blade and brandished it. Those traitors are rats in a trap. Search the forest. We're sure to find their trail. The soldiers of the 8 great battalions surged forward. Xiao Qiye was squatting by the stream, washing his face. When he heard the rumbling of hoofbeats, he looked back just in time to see Han Jin spurring his horse over. The moment Han Jin caught sight of him, he bellowed, "The traitor's here. Catch him." Xiao Qiye whistled to summon Snowcrest. The 500 men from the Imperial Army who were scattered among the trees ran about in a panicked fluster, hollering as they were chased through the forest. Han Jin couldn't help but grow excited. He laughed aloud, then shouted, "Your lordship, who would have thought you'd find yourself at my mercy today?" Abandoning his own men, Xiao Qiye fled alone on his horse. Han Jin, afraid he would slip away, led his men in hot pursuit. The 8 great battalions charged through the forest, following Han Jin northeast at breakneck speed. The farther Han Jin galloped, the more anxious he became. He shouted ahead, "Xiao Qiye, you have nowhere to run. Surrender yourself." Casting a glance behind him, Xiao Qiye tried to rally his men to mount some resistance, but they were no match for the 8 great battalions' ferocity. The sight of 500 men running for their lives was a sorry sight. In no time at all, they'd fled to the edges of the forest. They made a beeline for the Silt River, where the 8 great battalion soldiers finally boxed them in. "Xiao Qiye." Han Jin reined his horse to a halt and waved his sleeve at the horizon. "Look around you. These are all soldiers from my 8 great battalions. You are besieged on all sides. What are you still struggling for? Beg for mercy now, and I'll spare your life." Snowcrest wheeled to face them, stamping in place. Xiao Qiye said frostily, "You want to kill me? Sure. I just want to ask one question first. Why didn't Han Chung come himself today?" "My eldest brother is currently the noble regent, attending to weighty official duties. Why would he come all the way out here to deal with you?" Han Jin leveled his sword at Xiao Qiye. "Dismount your horse now and surrender, and your Xiao clan still has a slim chance of survival. You alone made this heinous mistake. Are you willing to let your entire family pay with their lives?" "I've made many mistakes." Xiao Qiye looked down at his nose at Han Jin. but it's hardly the Han clan's place to discuss that with me. The moment the words left his mouth, several hundred people on either side of him surged to their feet, completely surrounding Han Jin. Tantai Hu led the soldiers forward, slashing at everyone in his path and throwing both men and horses off their feet in the confusion. The men around Han Jin were all mounted members of the embroidered uniform guard Han Chung had assigned to protect him. They realized immediately that they had fallen for a trap and raised their whips to strike Han Jin's horse, attempting to drive him out of the pincer movement through the edge of the forest. When had Han Jin ever seen such a battle formation before? He was knowledgeable enough when it came to the military exercises held at the Chudu drill grounds, but he had never fought a real battle. He was frightened, entirely out of his wits. The sting of the whips jerked his horse into action, and it broke into a mad gallop toward the periphery of the forest, the embroidered uniform guard forming a protective circle around its rider. Shen Zichuan stood in the shadow of a tree at the edge of the forest, blade in hand, and watched Han Jin approach. Han Jin would have charged straight through, but a sharp-eyed guard deftly reined in the horse. Under their sheen of cold sweat and fresh blood, the guards exchanged glances. Eventually, the man in the lead spoke up. "Vice Commander, it's fate that has led us to encounter each other today. Why not let us go for the sake of our past comradeship?" Shen Zichuan had thinned alarmingly in the past few days. The bones of his wrist as he held the blade resembled the snow-white arc of a crescent moon peeking out from the opening of his unadorned white sleeve. His eyes seemed to reflect glacial ice, even as a smile as warm as springtime gradually spread over his face. "I understand my fellow brothers were entrusted with this mission by another, and had no choice but to obey." This soldier knew Shen Zichuan was a malicious, ruthless character. When he saw that particular smile, he stepped before Han Jin and shuffled a few paces back. The sounds of fighting and killing filled the air behind him. He knew Xiao Qie was closing in on them as well, one step at a time. Sweat trickled down the man's temples. "Your Excellency has a bright future ahead of you. Why follow a traitor and suffer untold hardships out here in the wilderness? If you are willing to release Commander Han now, the Chief Commander of the Embroidered Uniform Guard will forget any past grudges and welcome you back to the capital with open arms." Unexpectedly, Shen Zichuan chuckled. His laugh was clear and languid, pleasant to the ears. His pale skin appeared extraordinarily delicate under the dappled sunlight between the leaves. He drew his sword with a terrible slowness, scraping Avalanche's slender blade against its sheath. "I'm very grateful to Han Chung." Shen Zichuan gripped the hilt and paused. "Words cannot express the extent of my gratitude toward him. When you return to the capital, please bring him a thank you gift on my behalf." A chill jolted up Han Jin's spine, and he nearly tumbled off his horse. Oh, I love Shen Zichuan. I love him doing his thing. His thing that he does. Xiao Qie knelt by the water and rinsed away the blood on his blade. Crouching nearby, Shen Zichuan buried both palms in the stream, not removing them even after Xiao Qie had finished washing Wolf's Fang. Xiao Qie squatted opposite Shen Zichuan. He was much taller than him, but like this, he could still lean his forehead against Shen Zichuan's. Their palms met in the water, and Xiao Qie grasped his fingertips. Shen Zichuan's sobs of a few days ago seemed to be a forgotten dream. He was clean and composed under the sunlight. Very slowly, his index finger stroked along Xiao Qie's hand and slid through the space between Xiao Qie's fingers. His palm fit into Xiao Qie's palm, bringing along with it the icy softness of the current. I love this holding hands underwater thing happening. Tantai Hu was a short distance away, leading the men to clean up the battlefield. They still had to stay overnight in this forest. There were soldiers nearby everywhere, but Shen Zichuan's hand clung to his, as if he was nonchalantly playing with it, yet also, like a seduction long premeditated. The stench of blood was still on him. Xiao Jie let him do as he wished. You left only one soldier alive and sent him back home. What if he doesn't bring the message back to them? Shen Zichuan looked at the shimmering surface of the stream. He's a member of the embroidered uniform guard. As long as he's alive, he has to complete his mission. Han Jin has fallen into our hands. If he doesn't bring this news back, then he has failed in his duty. He's sure to die anyway, so he might as well die with a little dignity. Not to mention, the heads in that burlap sack all belong to on-duty members of the embroidered uniform guard with their authority tokens. He has to bring his brothers home. Xiao Chie's fingers itched to wipe away the droplets of blood on Shen Zichuan's wrists, but there were eyes all around. The pair gazed at each other for a moment. He suddenly grasped Shen Zichuan's hand, then leaned forward and said, You left your earrings back in Chudu. I'll have some new ones made for you once we arrive in Li Bei. You have an outstanding bill of several thousand taels of silver. Shen Zichuan looked at him. Tighten your belt and make some money first, Argongza. I can marry into a rich family. Pledge my body for money. Xiao Chie's voice was low. Pressing their joined hands against the soft sediment of the stream bed, Shen Zichuan whispered into Xiao Chie's ear, 500 taels for one night. That flicker of sensuality hung in the air between them. Before it could shift the atmosphere, Shen Zichuan looked back with a serious countenance at Tantai Hu, who was hovering, unsure of his approach. Han Jin intended to return to Chudu as soon as possible, and had Dan Chung supplying him with whatever he needed. He probably didn't bring that much in the way of provisions. Tell everyone to eat their fill tonight. Tomorrow morning, Shen Zichuan stopped. He cast a swift, sidelong glance at Xiao Chie before he continued. We'll continue northeast. Xiao Chie said nothing and earnestly set to washing his handkerchief, all the while caressing Shen Zichuan's hand beneath it until even his palm blushed red. Henry, tomorrow we will homosexually continue northeast. That is yep, I agree. I cannot with them. I just can't. Okay, let me figure out what I should do as far as the break. Hold on. I have to remind myself how many chapters I was going to read. Okay. I don't know. What do y'all think? Does it make sense for me to go ahead and read the next chapter, or should I take a break now and then come back? And then we'll have 3 chapters. I don't know. I'm a little bit scared of the chapter title here. Because I don't know who it's a threat against. It's latent threat. Oh, Blue. You read Lantern Threat. And you almost sent the window of heaven. I can't speak right now. Sorry. The window of heaven is here. I'm too excited about just the ambush that they planned. Maybe I should take a break now because my ability to talk has just been broken by everything. But yes, the window of heaven is here. Oh goodness. Yeah. Henry, is that a new pair of glasses? No, I've had these for a little while. Yeah, 3 chapters back to back. Well, it's either 3 chapters now or 3 chapters after the break. I think that at least one of them must be kind of short, because I did the page math, so yeah, one of them is short. I think it'll be fine. Henry, maybe it's the different hat makes them look different for some reason. I don't know, but I get it. Yeah, that might be it. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm gonna take a break. I will be back in 5 to 10 minutes, and we will be reading Chapter 100, Latent Threat. Whatever that means. Hi, I have returned. Yeah, Nina, I agree with you. I also can't believe we are in the later half of Volume 3 already. Um, we, we will be finishing next week. And next week, the streams, just like the page number, I have like one stream is gonna be like 42 pages, which is kind of short for me. But we'll probably have a lot to talk about, so that's probably it's am I taking Thursday the 27th off? I am going to read on am I going to read on the 27th? Wait, Thursday? Oh, I wouldn't be reading on Thursday anyway. Or when is I need to look at a calendar, but I think where my stream falls, I didn't plan a break for Thanksgiving because I'll be doing stuff that day, but Wednesday I'm free. Yeah. No, it's okay. I understand the mix-up. Yeah, so I'm gonna be taking a break around... There's like one day that I'm not streaming for Christmas, And then there's another one for New Year's. I think it's New Year's Eve that I'm taking off. Other than that, I don't have any breaks planned up ahead. So we're gonna like get through to the end of volume 4 of QJJ, and then it's gonna be like late December. I'm gonna like start case file, have an off day, another case file stream, have an off day for New Year's, and then we'll be fully into case file mode for a while. So that's the plan, at least. So meat bun for Christmas is still insane to me, Blue. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of a funny time to start a book like that, I guess. But I'm excited. Yeah. Well, we are on page 279 for chapter 100, Latent Threat. News of Han Jin's rash attack made its way quickly back to Chudu, where it caused quite a stir. The only surviving member of the embroidered uniform guard had stumbled into the city carrying a sack of human heads and a clear message. Shen Zichuan and Xiao Chia had split completely from Chudu. There was no possibility they would sit down to negotiate. Han Jin's capture sent Han Chung into a rage. The embroidered uniform guard had been falling apart since Shen Zichuan left Chudu. The men under Ge Qingqing were still in Jueshi looking after the Shi clan, and Fei Sheng had gone to ground with his own trusted subordinates. Han Chung hadn't many men left with him. Under Ji Wufan's command, the embroidered uniform guard had been at the height of power and the peak of glory. By the time Ji Lei took up the mantle, it was already on the decline. Now, in Han Chung's hands, it had become no more than a fractured squad of ceremonial guards. The men under Fei Sheng's command were capable, but the moment Han Chung had exposed his intent to kill him, he'd lost any chance of winning Fei Sheng over to his side. Once the immediate situation has stabilized, the 12 offices of the embroidered uniform guard will have to be reorganized. Our current lack of manpower is disgraceful. We can't get anything done with so few people. Sitting a step below the Empress Dowager, Han Chung continued steadily. I have noticed lately that too many sons of noble clans are in positions with practically no obligations. Why not recruit them? Giving them something to do will prevent them from stirring up trouble at this sensitive juncture. The Empress Dowager wore a crown of jade, her hair pulled back into a tidy bun. Pendant earrings inlaid with gold and gems dangled from her ears. She was well suited to this elegant and poised manner of dress, in the same way a peony ought to be grown within the vermilion gates of the affluent. Only gold and jade in their glorious splendor were worthy of adorning a divine beauty like her. Though the bloom of her youth had faded, her graceful demeanor was undiminished. At present, she held a wooden spoon, teasing a parrot. I think we should keep parrots far away from her. Didn't she kill the old emperor's parrot? I don't like her having a parrot. Or any kind of bird. I remember her. It was almost like a throwaway line. I swear, she killed the parrot in like, was it book 1? Oh, does anyone remember that? Without turning, she said, "The embroidered uniform guard is a place where serious work is done. It's already providing for many sons of noble clans. Continue stuffing unqualified men into the ranks, and sooner or later it will be rendered useless. The 8 great battalions were routed outside Dancheng. If you ask me, both forces not only need an infusion of new blood, but a dismissal of some old-timers as well." Han Chung had been only been thinking of finding decent posts for the young masters of noble clans at the behest of their families. He concurred at once. I have the same intent. I'll discuss it with the Ministry of War tomorrow and submit a memorial to the Grand Secretariat. Your Majesty, Hai Liangyi is so ill he can hardly stand up straight. He's been toiling for the state all his life. At the very least, we mustn't let him ruin his health beyond repair. We should come up with some arrangement for him. By this, he of course meant that Hai Liangyi ought to be relieved of his post and sent back to his hometown. Smiling amiably, the Empress Dowager tapped the wooden spoon once more and handed it to Aunt Liu Xiang, who stood nearby to serve. Henry, all toxic parents in Danmei know is kill birds, be abusive, eat hot chip, and lie. Agreed. He suffers from an affliction of the heart and simply has yet to regain his footing. He understands the 6 ministries best. How could we rashly dismiss him at such a crucial time? Let's wait a few more days. Having been tactfully rebuffed, Han Chung inwardly gnashed his teeth, though his expression remained unchanged. Your Majesty leads the administration now, so naturally it is for your Majesty to decide. Since the 8 great battalions have been defeated outside Dancheng, and Xiao Chia has fled to Zhongbo, the Ministry of War ought to deploy the Qidong garrison troops to stop him as soon as possible. Otherwise, the Libei armored cavalry will gain 20,000 more men as reinforcements when he returns. The Empress Dowager wiped her hands clean. If you had stopped him in Chudu, we would not have these pressing worries now. Zhou Gui, the prefect of Suzhou, knows his job, and he's also caught in a tight spot. He must still deal with Libei in the future, so he cannot afford to offend them. Xiao Chia's return to Libei is a foregone conclusion. If we mobilize Qi Juyin now, she'd be fighting the Libei armored cavalry head-on. It's easy for us to talk of deploying troops, but where are the provisions to sustain the army as they march north? Hezhou can't bear the additional burden. Are we just going to let Xiao Chia return to Libei? Han Chung leapt to his feet in astonishment. This will make Libei even more formidable. The Empress Dowager allowed Aunt Liu Xiang to support her with an arm as she stood at the entrance of the courtyard and gazed out at the vividly colored blossoms. Han Chung, do you imagine Xiao Chia will be of assistance when he returns to Libei? Han Chung, leaning forward attentively, said deferentially, I don't understand. Please enlighten me. Since Xiao Jiming took command of the Libei armored cavalry from Xiao Fengshu, it has taken him 10 years to get to where he is today. He is the heart of Libei's military forces, the one the soldiers look up to. Spotting Hua Xiangyi pouncing on butterflies in the garden with the maidservants, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but smile. She watched for a moment longer before she continued. Xiao Chia has been away from Libei for 6 years. His return now makes him look like a wolf pup intruding into someone else's territory. He said Chudu is not the home of which he dreams, but he's too young to understand the phrase, time changes everything. With his 20,000 men of his imperial army, he will find himself out of his element in Libei. Xiao Fengshu has always been rigid in organizing the Libei armored cavalry under a single command. This is the reason he's still standing today, but it will also make it hard for Xiao Chia to find his place. Amid such a pack of wolves, Xiao Chia, if he wishes to break through and become the king wolf, must first possess the determination to bite the former king of wolves to death. The Empress Dowager looked back and smiled at Han Chung. The Xiao clan can't stomach the sight of internal strife among other clans, but sometimes strife is inevitable. The Xiao clan has always been a paragon of brotherly love and harmony, but how long can brotherhood last in the face of competing military power? The battlefield is cruel, Millions of battered soldiers shed their blood there. But the battle for power is more brutal still, and a change of hands often means infighting and fratricide. Han Chung shrank a little under the Empress Dowager's gaze and lowered his head in agreement. Your Majesty is wise, but now that Xiao Jiming is so injured, it's entirely reasonable for Xiao Chia to stand in for him. Did Xiao Jiming die? Han Chung shook his head. No, Xiao Jiming did not die, the Empress Dowager said. He can still coordinate military affairs from behind the troops, while Xiao Fengshu, who has come out of retirement, commands the soldiers at the front. The father and son control the Libe armored cavalry together, something that requires strong mutual understanding and consideration for each other. But Xiao Chia possesses both the ability to coordinate military affairs and the ability to charge into battle and slaughter the enemy. If he barges into this homogeneous army and upsets the equilibrium, he'll be the unforeseen variable that unbalances the Libe armored cavalry. Perhaps he doesn't intend to take his father or elder brother's place. But very soon, he will understand that Libe isn't as indivisible as we perceive it to be. His return is the latent threat that will fracture Libe. I guess we know where that chapter title came from. I want to say I don't agree with her, but the fact that we're seeing her say this is concerning to me. Because it does feel like, okay, this is something that could happen. Like, it's a possibility. But I don't think that he wants to take his brother's place. I'm not really sure what Xiao Chia wants in terms of his place in Libe and what he wants to do in Libe. I think he just wants to be home. So part of me is like, yeah, the Empress Dowager is like projecting her view of things. She's very like, I don't trust anybody, not even, family. But part of me is like, uh-oh, I don't know, maybe she's right. Like what you said, Henry, through tears, she has a point. Yeah. The trajectory of the situation was not something anyone could have directed. It was something that took shape based on the opportunities presented. The seed had been sowed the day Xiao Fengshu founded the Libe armored cavalry, its strength powerful enough to stand against the imperial capital of Chudu. As for what fruit it would eventually bear, no one knew. In this world, the common man endures the worries of common men, while the talented must endure the agony of genius, the Empress Dowager said calmly. There is already a Xiao Jiming. Why beget a Xiao Chia? 6 years is neither a particularly long nor short time, but it's enough to change many things. Xiao Chia's agony in Chudu springs from the fact that he isn't a man content with carefree mediocrity. Yet when he returns to Libe, he will continue to be tormented by the self-same suffering. Once these models of brotherhood realize that killing each other is the only way forward, his anguish will intensify. Whether Xiao Jiming cedes his position to Xiao Chia, or Xiao Chia excuses himself to avoid conflict, these brothers, who were once loyal and devoted to each other, will grow estranged. Even in the warmth of the 5th month, Han Chung felt himself prickle with goosebumps, followed by a tingling thrill. The former emperor has been formally interred. There ought to be some progress on the preparation of a new ruler, the Empress Dowager said, changing the subject. You say you found a true imperial heir. When are you planning to produce him for me to have a look? Han Chung bowed slightly. I've dispatched men to bring the imperial heir to Chudu with all speed. Your Majesty can expect to see the heir in 5 days at the latest. The Empress Dowager watched him. If you were so sure he's the imperial heir, you must have credible proof. The concerns of the civil officials under Hai Liangyi won't be easy to dismiss. Han Chung, you should make all necessary preparations. Like, I thought they killed all the possible male heirs. So I'm wondering where he's getting this person from. Or if, like, they scooped him out already before killing the others. What's going on? Maybe it's fake. Maybe he's a fake heir, whoever they're talking about. Han Chung kept her company a while longer, then said his farewells and left. The moment he had gone, Hua Xiangyi approached the Empress Dowager with a bouquet of flowering branches in her arms. The Han clan has never climbed so high before. Give him an inch, and he loses all sense of propriety. The Empress Dowager looked in the direction of Han Chung's departure, and pulled Hua Xiangyi along to stroll for a few steps. Han Jin was defeated in Dancheng. The man's a fool. He had timing, geography, and numbers all in his favor, yet he was still taken captive. How can such a person be trusted with heavy responsibilities? Han Chung entered the palace today to hint that I should dispatch men to save him. He cannot fathom that they've only kept Han Jin alive this long to threaten him. I've noticed the chief commander looks awfully well lately. He doesn't even address himself as this subject when he enters the palace to pay his respects. Hua Xiangyi leaned against the Empress Dowager. Auntie, he has lofty goals. Considering how quick he was to prepare the so-called imperial heir, I fear he's already unsatisfied with being the chief commander of the embroidered uniform guard. He wants to be a prince regent. The Empress Dowager picked a blossom from the branches in Hua Xiangyi's arms. I've already looked into the child. How could he claim that's an orphan of the late Guangzhong emperor? It's merely a child of some distant relative he found in his hometown. Rather delusional for such a lowly thing to dream of ruling the Li clan's empire, don't you agree? The Empress Dowager thought for a moment. Still, there really is no one else at present. They spoke a few more words before Fu Man hurried over. Bowing low, he announced, Assistant Minister Xue requests an audience. Somebody was saying, yeah, Anna, I don't remember, but that kind of sounds familiar. Yao Wenyu or Hai Liangyi or someone was saying that if there is no heir at this point, he will produce one. So, we might be getting a fake heir because the Empress Dowager just wants somebody, and maybe she's like okay with it being fake if she can twist things to her side. Henry, let's empreg an heir. Vase of Peonies. I thought Fu Man was on our side. I could not even tell you whose side I thought Fu Man was on. At this point, I just don't know. Tantai Hu distributed the rations that night. It was, as Shen Zichuan expected. Han Jin had traveled light when he led the troops after them, and brought little in the way of provisions. The Imperial Army, however, had gone hungry for several days. At least tonight they could eat their fill. Shen Zichuan had grown terribly thin after his teacher's passing, but this forest had long been cleared of game. There wasn't even a rabbit to be had. Xiaoqia gave Shen Zichuan the steamed bun and meat jerky he had set aside, and settled down to eat dry biscuits and rice gruel like everyone else. Tantai Hu crouched down next to the fire. I've carried out Master's instructions and sent someone to notify Zhou Gui so he can prepare. Once we make our way past Sezhou the day after tomorrow, you'll be home. Xiaoqia threw more wood into the bonfire. That notice to Zhou Gui is so he can put on a show with us. With Han Jin in our hands, he'll have no choice but to give way. Han Jin really appeared at the most opportune time. Tantai Hu grinned. Just yesterday we were worrying about how to get past Suzhou, and now he's delivered himself right to our doorstep. Shen Zichuan warmed his hands by the fire and said nothing, his eyes on the flames. Tantai Hu soaked his biscuit in his soup. I ate rations like this when I served in Deng Zhou's garrison troops years ago. The Zhongbo of today is entirely different from the Zhongbo back then. I barely recognize it now. Ding Tao poured a bit of rice from his bowl to feed the sparrow in his sleeve. It's not so bad here near Suzhou. If you go further east, you'll see what it really means to be unrecognizable. With his perfect recall, Ding Tao could still vividly see the tragic scenes he had witnessed in Duanzhou and Dunzhou 6 years ago when he followed Xiao Qie with the army to clean up the aftermath of the Biansha massacre. He'd been barely 10 then, and had only just procured a little notebook to take notes like his father did. After what he saw, he had nightmares the rest of the journey. You came after the battle. You've never seen what Zhongbo looked like before. Tantai Hu lowered his eyes to the soup in the bowl. My parents took me to see Dunzhou when I was a child. It was a big city, almost as bustling as Chengdu. The fireworks and lanterns during the New Year holidays were beautiful, and so was the Turtle Mountain display. They built a shell of lanterns as tall as 2 men for the Lantern Festival. People crowded and jostled with one another to see it. There were so many people. So, we've got actual lanterns in our lantern threat chapter. But poor Ding Tao. Like 10 years old? Are you kidding me? Also, I do think it's cute that he has, I forget the word they use. I don't know if it's the same as a photographic memory or if it's just really close. But he has something akin to that, but he still like writes everything down in a notebook, and I love that. Shen Wei had been the prince of Jianxing, and his manor had been in Dunzhou. For a moment, everyone looked at the ground. No one dared glance at Shen Zichuan, and they equally feared offending Xiao Qie. During these days on the road, the Imperial Army had gradually discovered the subtle and delicate relationship between the two of them. Seeing the evidence before their eyes was entirely different from merely hearing rumors, as they'd done in the past. How should they treat Shen Zichuan? Should they regard him as their madam, the wife of their commander? But which lady of the house could command the embroidered uniform guard in 3 separate raids? When he'd hacked off the heads of his former subordinates who were protecting Han Jin, not one of the officers from the Imperial Army could bring themselves to watch. Shen Zichuan was too different from Xiao Qie. He didn't look or behave like the supreme commander the Imperial Army was familiar with. He appeared gentle and modest, yet he rarely changed his mind during official discussions. He would overrule even Tantai Hu to his face, and compared to Xiao Qie, he was far more cold-blooded. In the past, they had all privately considered Shen Zichuan merely a beauty, a delicate vine clinging to the stronghold of power. But after Shen Zichuan had donned the scarlet python robe of the embroidered uniform guard, everything he had once concealed was exposed, shifting their perception of this last descendant of the Shen clan. His beauty was no longer a vision anyone could wantonly admire. It was an unrivaled allure that bespoke a ruthless strength. I'm sorry I can't speak today. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's just everything that happened last time and everything that's happening now. Yes, Vase of Peonies, get you a wife who can do both. I love this. I love that they're like, they don't know how to treat him, and they're kind of I mean, I guess they're like afraid of him, but I feel like they're kind of trying to be respectful in a way. And they're just like, I don't know. I don't know how to like regard this person. I love getting that insight into how Shen Zichuan is seen. Other than the perpetually clueless Ding Tao, there were very few in the Imperial Army willing to look Shen Zichuan in the eye. Even Tantai Hu could sense a certain strain. The soldiers took their orders from Xiao Chie, and they didn't mind if Xiao Chie preferred men. But they had to determine where Shen Zichuan stood as soon as possible. Shen Zichuan had the ability to vie with Xiao Chie for power and authority. This was what had thrown them off balance these last few days, a subtle wariness of the unknown. Xiao Chie rubbed his thumb ring. He was about to speak when Shen Zichuan turned his palms toward the fire and said, "The wild herbs and vegetables in Duanzhou are delicious." The tense atmosphere eased a little. Ding Tao raised his head. I heard the others back in Libei say a handful of wild vegetables from Duanzhou in the winter are as costly as gold. I want to try them. Gongzi, did you eat them often? When the ice and snow melted in spring, my Xinyang always made dumplings with the most tender wild vegetables, Shen Zichuan replied. His fingertips were clean and fresh scrubbed, as if they had never been tainted with blood. He smiled. I rarely ate them. That's why I remember it so clearly. Ding Tao, his mouth watering, wrote carefully in his notebook with the bit of ink he had. I want to eat it. We'll definitely get a chance to in the future. As long as I write it down, I won't forget. Tantai Hu rubbed the back of Ding Tao's head with a smile and chided. Grow up. What delicacy haven't you tasted in Chudu? To think you're still coveting wild vegetables. Everyone laughed, and the topic of Zhongbo was thus diverted. Shen Zichuan warmed his hands and said nothing more. That night, Xiao Chie rested his head on a stone. He had yet to fall asleep when he felt a piece of warm oil paper pressed to his cheek. He sat up, took a sniff at the packet in Shen Zichuan's hands, and smiled. Where did you get this bun from? Ding Tao brought it back from town. He told me to keep it for later. Shen Zichuan settled down next to Xiao Chie. They sat side by side, with their backs to the sleeping forest and the boundless starry sky before them. Xiao Chie opened the oil paper and pushed it towards Shen Zichuan. Eat. It'll get cold if you keep it any longer. I'm full, Shen Zichuan said. You can have it. Knowing Shen Zichuan had saved it especially for him, Xiao Chie accepted the bun but broke it into two, half in one hand for himself, half in the other for Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan took a few token bites and let Xiao Chie finish the rest. You still have to decide whether to take my bride price of 2 million taels to Li Bei or leave it in Suzhou. Xiao Chie drank from the water skin. You already sent Ge Qingqing a message. He'll surely keep an eye on the Shi clan's businesses for you. Once we reach Li Bei, Chao Tianya and Chen Yang won't be far behind. When the time comes, we'll build a new courtyard. Xiao Chie stopped, sensing something off in Shen Zichuan's abnormal silence. He fell quiet. Is there something you want to tell me? Gripping that little bamboo fan that never left his side, Shen Zichuan looked at Xiao Chie from the corner of his eye. Sa'an, I can't go to Li Bei with you. The way he spoke was so gentle, just like days ago, when he had stood at the battlements atop the city gate and said with the same tenderness, Sa'an, go home. We're going back to this. I need to know why. I need to know why, Shen Zichuan. Why? I'm sure there's a good reason, but why? That's the end of the chapter. We're on chapter 101 on page 291, which is called Treasure. Shen Zichuan had, back at the Temple of Guilt, received Qi Huilian's entire lifetime of knowledge. When he had knelt at Qi Huilian's feet 6 years ago, he already knew the path he would take. It was in pain and anxiety that he tempered his body and spirit. He had entertained the naive thought that he could throw off the constraints of the noble clans by relying on political strategizing alone. But he had failed. Shen Zichuan looked ahead. The murmuring waters of the river flowed past like a life that had plunged into darkness, unable to change direction, twinkling only with the borrowed light of the starry sky reflected in it. He nudged the little bamboo fan open, then eased it closed again. I left Chudu, but I am still caged, he said. This is my punishment for taking my chances. I need to find a new way out. Xian Sheng entrusted his entire lifetime of convictions to me. I promised I'd fight to the end of this battle for him. We endured everything in the past because Chudu hadn't seemed to have reached a point of no return. But now I understand that its decline has long been irreversible. It's already the sun setting beyond the western hills. In that heavy downpour, Qi Huilian had shouted about the rotten sky and earth. Yet even then, his raised arms had seemed a futile attempt to hold up the collapsing state. He'd taken an entirely different path from Hai Liangyi, yet both had lit the same torch. In the last moments of his life that had blazed always for the Li clan, he had cast aside the crown prince, that imperial son he had never been able to let go of, and chosen Shen Zichuan, who came from nothing. To any bystander, Qi Huilian's two students would have seemed worlds apart, as unalike as clouds and mud. The crown prince was a lawful son of the Li clan, born to become a wise sovereign. Qi Huilian had thought that, with this undisputed descendant of direct lineage, they could create a new world. But he had failed. He had found Shen Zichuan in the mire. Shen Zichuan, whose mother was of lowly birth, and whose father was a traitor who fled from battle. Shen Zichuan, who was no son of lawful birth. Yet Qi Huilian chose such a Shen Zichuan. His lifelong conviction had changed, and he no longer bowed to the determination of lineage. He hoped for Shen Zichuan to pierce through this wretched, decaying empire. I've given up enduring in silence. Shen Zichuan rested his fan on his knee and turned slightly to gaze at Xiao Qie. I'm choosing another way to fight. I want to remain in Zhongbo. You once said to Tantai Hu, the wrongs suffered by our families have yet to be avenged, and the humiliation of our nation has yet to be redressed. You were right, Sa'an. The humiliation Zhongbo has suffered should be redressed in Zhongbo. This is what I want to do. One day, we will gallop together under the skies of Libei, and that will be when I've become strong and powerful. 2 million isn't enough to take away the wolf pup of the Prince of Libei. Such a betrothal gift is not worthy of my Xiao Za'an. If I'm in Zhongbo, I will one day become your indestructible shield. The water skin fell, splashing water across the ground and soaking the corner of Xiao Qie's robe. Under the soft veil of moonlight, Xiao Qie grasped Shen Zichuan's hand and pulled him into a fierce embrace. After a long time, Xiao Qie's hoarse voice rumbled beside Shen Zichuan's ear, clinging close. I'll leave my back to you, and you'll leave your chest to me. We cannot do without each other. I'll choose the best horse in Libei for you. We'll build a house on the demarcation line between Zhongbo and Libei and meet there every month. If you want to marry me, 2 million silver isn't enough. I want Lanzhou's priceless smile, far dearer than 1,000 gold. Shen Zichuan wrapped his arms around Xiao Qiye, embracing this captivating scent. Xiao Qiye was the wind sweeping over the meadow to assail the turbulent river of Shen Zichuan's heart, offering him a taste of the sweetness of love. After losing Duanzhou, and now his teacher, he had little left. He could only stride across that ravine of unfathomable depth to build a fortress for whatever was left of his heart's treasures. Anna, your favorite lines? Valid. Valid. Might be mine too. That was just a scene break. I just needed to stop for a moment. I had a thought, but now my head is empty. It's gone. Whatever thought I had, not here anymore. Oh, I was just gonna say, oh yeah, the chapter title is Treasure. And there we go. He could only stride across that ravine of unfathomable depth to build a fortress for whatever was left of his heart's treasures. There's the treasure, everybody. The prefect of Suzhou, Zhou Gui, had been particularly busy with his official duties in recent days. Since word came that the imperial army had passed Dancheng and was on their way to Suzhou, he tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep at night. Kongling, Zhou Gui's chief advisor, was a man from the prefecture of Dongzhou in Zhongbo who had come up with the prefect as fellow students. Earlier today, he had prepared wine and instructed the chef to prepare several refreshing cold delicacies. He now sat cross-legged on the veranda across a small table from Zhou Gui, conversing over drinks. Tiny white blossoms fell from the pagoda tree in the courtyard, filling the air with their fresh, sweet fragrance. I've hardly slept the past few days, Zhou Gui said, reaching for his wine cup. Sitting casually, Kong Ling sampled one of the dishes and swallowed a mouthful of strong wine. I know. The bandits in Dunzhou have converged into a sizable group. They can't be underestimated. We have no soldiers or horses. We can't afford to provoke them. But of course we just happened to have a bumper harvest last year. That bandit chief, Lei Chongming, is eyeing Suzhou's granary. All the grain has been sent to the Libei armored cavalry as military provisions. The granary in Suzhou is practically empty. I wrote a letter to Dunzhou's prefect, but you know he's a puppet propped up by Lei Chongming. Would he dare reason with Lei Chongming on our behalf? What can I do but suffer in silence? Zhou Gui couldn't even manage a sip of wine. And then there's that second young master of Libei who rebelled and fled to the capital. 20,000 Imperial Army soldiers are due to arrive at the city gate any day now. Changfeng, I'm in a dilemma. I can't let them pass, but I can't not let them pass either. Kongling set down his chopsticks. If Libei rebels, Suzhou will be caught right in the middle. We won't be able to sit on the fence for long. You'll have to make a decision as soon as possible. It's not up to me, Zhou Gui sighed miserably. We're genuinely cornered. Wolves before us and tigers behind. We can afford to offend neither Libei nor Chudu, and we have Lei Chongming staring us down like a beast eyeing its prey. Kongling plucked some flowers off the pagoda tree and tossed them into the wine. Lei Chongming is a bandit. He'll be hunted down and annihilated sooner or later. But the governments of the 6 prefectures all have their own problems to attend to and can't join forces to suppress the bandits. We don't know when the imperial court will send men over either. We watched Lei Chongming growing bolder by the day. He's already become the local tyrant of Zhongbo, but there's no use fretting now. When the Biansha horsemen breached our territory 6 years ago, Duanzhou and Dunzhou bore the brunt of the attack and became barren wastelands where bones of the dead lay exposed in the wild, and nary a rooster crowed for thousands of miles. There's a footnote. These are lines from the Graveyard Song by Cao Cao. The war turned all those acres of fertile farmland into abandoned fields. Who would be willing to serve as a soldier in the garrison troops now? Zhou Gui looked out over the courtyard and gestured around them. We in Suzhou were able to conserve our strength and resources, only thanks to the Libe armored cavalry's swift rescue. I've always kept in mind the goodwill they showed us. I have no complaints whatsoever about providing them with military provisions. But the accusation of regicide is a heinous one. I couldn't feign ignorance even if I wanted to. In less than a month, I expect Lei Chongming will come to ask for grain and money, and Xiao Qiye will arrive in Suzhou at the same time. When these two tyrants cross paths, who knows what disaster they'll bring down on us? This is truly what it means when they say that when it rains, it pours. After another sip of wine, Kongling had an idea. If Xiao Qiye is bringing 20,000 well-trained soldiers from the Imperial Army to Suzhou, doesn't that make them our soldiers? With Xiao Qiye here to personally assume command, even Lei Chongming will think twice. The Imperial Army remains in Chudu year-round. When have they ever seen a real battlefield? Lei Chongming trounced the garrison battalions in Duanzhou and Dunzhou, and he doesn't fear the Biansha horsemen either. What he counts on is the solidarity of those under his command. Moreover, he's familiar with Zhongbo's terrain. Even if they come to blows, Xiao Qiye might not necessarily come out on top. Zhou Gui flapped his hand. Besides, second young Master Xiao is young. He hasn't fought many battles, and he has his father and elder brother watching over him. If something happens to him in Suzhou, how will I answer to Li Bei? Kongling stroked his goatee. Xiao Qiye made a name for himself helping the Tianchen Emperor ascend the throne. The fact that the Imperial Army was willing to follow him after he rebelled and fled from Chudu shows he's capable and has his men's loyalty. Why else would they be willing to risk their heads and flee this far with him? But seeing is believing. We can take his measure when he arrives. I've heard he's difficult to get along with. This was what Zhou Gui was most worried about. And he's been in Chudu a long time. If he puts on airs like a rich young master, I'll have to hurry and figure out how to send him away. We can't afford to have him stirring up trouble. A few days later, the Imperial Army arrived at the foot of Suzhou's city walls. Zhou Gui didn't dare let them into the city immediately, and merely opened the gate to admit Xiao Qiye and Shen Zichun. He had given instructions to prepare a banquet to welcome their guests, but Xiao Qiye turned it down, explaining that they were exhausted from their journey. Instead, he asked Zhou Gui to prepare a table of simple home-cooked dishes over which they might reminisce about the past. They had never met before, only corresponded through letters. What past was there to reminisce about? Xiao Qiye was clearly looking for an opportunity to speak with Zhou Gui without distraction. Shen Zichun changed his clothes and remained behind the screen, looking at the courtyard from the window. Xiao Qiye had come in late. He was still undressing himself. After unfastening half his clothes, he leaned over the top of the screen to look at Shen Zichun behind it. Can you see clearly through this thing? Seeing him peer so easily over the screen, Shen Zichun marveled once again at this man's excessive height. There are some things that will only move one's heart when seen through a dream or an illusion. It wouldn't be an enchanting sight if I could see clearly. Xiao Chia's open robe exposed half his chest. His last piece of clothing hung unabashedly on him, the firm muscle of his torso faintly visible through the sheer screen. He was still leaning over the top of it, watching Shen Zichuan. After fleeing Chudu, he no longer wore a neat crown, yet his messy hair did nothing to diminish his dashing good looks. He seemed to display more of his carefree side the closer he got to Li Bei. What a frivolous fellow. Shen Zichuan stepped up to the screen and cupped the back of Xiao Chia's head before tilting his face up to kiss him. Xiao Chia pinched Shen Zichuan's chin, and taking full advantage of his height, raised it high, exposing Shen Zichuan's smooth and fair neck. Neck mentioned. Neck, nape, anything like that. Got a drink. The kiss sent electricity racing up Shen Zichuan's spine. Take a good look. Xiao Chia rubbed at the wet sheen on Shen Zichuan's radiant lips. Are you not enchanted? Shen Zichuan licked the remnants of the kiss off his lips, deepening their rosy hue. There's still a little something missing. 500 taels for tonight. Xiao Chia bent down closer and whispered. Satisfaction guaranteed. I'm afraid my frail body couldn't take it. Shen Zichuan leaned back slightly. With the flimsy fabric of the screen separating them, his fingertips longingly slid their way down the shadow of Xiao Chia's chest. The expression in Xiao Chia's eyes was dangerous. Don't think so little of yourself, he murmured. Lanzhou. Shen Zichuan withdrew his hand. When we came in earlier, I saw another person beside Zhou Gui. Who is he? I didn't recognize him. Xiao Chia changed his clothes with nimble fingers. He should be Zhou Gui's chief advisor. We'll know once we ask during dinner later. Since he didn't let us through immediately, he must have some reservations. Shen Zichuan watched as Xiao Chia stepped out from behind the screen, then turned back to the window. When we're discussing tonight, you mustn't. Xiao Chia picked Shen Zichuan up by the waist and turned to press him against the wall beside the window. Hands sliding down to cup his rear, he held Shen Zichuan tightly against him and kissed him hard. Shen Zichuan lifted his arms to hook them around Xiao Chia's neck. The sudden kisses disoriented him and threw his breathing into disarray. I mustn't leverage my power to bully them. Xiao Chia's expression was serious. I know. I'll do as my wife says. While Shen Zichuan was still catching his breath, Xiao Chia fastened his high collar for him, then brushed aside his ink-black hair to pinch his right ear. I want to hang an earring here as soon as possible. I'll engrave my name, Xiao Za'an, on it. I was gonna say, Blue, this is what, the second screen scene? And I said in the first one, I love the screen thing. I love, like, when there's some sort of barrier between the characters, but, like, the desire is there. And there was, like, literally a screen between them. And now we have another screen scene. I'm just... I don't know. The scenes are just they're so good. And I feel like this one is different from the first one because their relationship is so much closer. But we still have the thing with the screen. I don't know, it's interesting. I'm gonna start spinning out, like, thinking about what it means now. But yeah, Henry, exactly. Hot. Next question. So, wait, let me make sure. I think I was gonna read one more chapter. Yeah, I am... Hold on. Yeah, I'm reading one more chapter today. We are on page 299 for chapter 102, which is called Suzhou. Zhou Gui acceded to Xiao Qi's wishes and set up a table of home-cooked dishes in his own courtyard. When Shen Zichuan stepped through the entrance, he found the little courtyard tasteful despite its simplicity. It had a natural beauty, absent any valuable wares of gold and jade. Zhou Gui welcomed Xiao Qie and invited him to take the seat of honor. It was presently the sweltering 6th month, but a clear stream ran beside the table with hanging branches brushing against the water, so it was pleasantly cool and cheery. Zhou Gui had dismissed all the servants. Only Kong Ling remained standing in attendance to pour wine. Xiao Qie cleaned his hands and watched as his cup was gradually filled to the brim. Prefect Zhou has truly gone to quite a bit of trouble. Even the wine prepared is on horseback from Li Bei. The wine prepared is capital letters on horseback from Li Bei. So that's the name of the wine. That's a fun wine name. I've been away from home so many years. It's been a long time since I enjoyed it. This was a grain wine from the Li Bei armored cavalry, bold and intense in flavor. A few sips in the snowy winter could warm the body. There was a story behind its name, on horseback. More than 30 years ago, on his wedding night, the Prince of Li Bei, Xiao Fengshu, received an urgent report regarding an incursion by the Biansha horsemen. With no time to change out of his wedding finery, he mounted his horse and rode onto the battlefield. Before he set off, the princess consort of Li Bei, herself still in her red wedding robes, lifted a jug to pour and exchanged a nuptial toast with Xiao Fengshu on horseback. This sight was common enough at the frontiers, but as the groom was the celebrated Prince of Li Bei, the onlookers couldn't help but lament. From then on, for most of 360 days in a year, on horseback he rides, weapon in hand, came to be the reputation of the Li Bei armored cavalry. And there's a footnote for that quote. Now then, 360 days out of each year, I'm riding, spear in hand, my trusted war horse dear, from Composed on Horseback by Ji Guang, a general and writer of the Ming Dynasty, refers to his military dedication. When Zhou Gui saw Xiao Qie's serene expression, his anxiety eased. We are close to the Northeast Provisions Trail. When the military provisions were delivered last month, the army sent quite a few jars of wine over. Your lordship is about to return home, but Suzhou has no fine things to entertain you with. I can only offer you a gift of something already given. Xiao Qie laughed. It's local dishes made from the bounty of the land that are the most flavorful. Compared to the fussy delicacies of Chudu, the spread on this table is a greater show of sincerity. There's no need for your excellency to be modest. The arrangements for the military provisions are complex, and it's all thanks to your excellency's valuable assistance that Suzhou could finish sealing and loading the grain in just a few short days. It's only fitting that I offer you a toast to show my appreciation. Zhou Gui couldn't accept the toast sitting down and hurriedly rose to his feet. He held the cup in both hands for a toast, then drunk with Xiao Qie, only taking his seat after the cup was empty. The Li Bei armored cavalry is fighting the Hanma tribe at the front line, and military provisions are crucial to the battlefield. What I did was only my duty. How can it be worthy of a special thanks from your lordship? I really don't deserve it. It's true Suzhou had a bumper harvest last year, but it's been continuously providing aid to Duanzhou and Li Bei since the start of spring. That's all grain saved up by the commoners of Suzhou. Of course I must show my gratitude. As he spoke, Xiao Chia raised a hand to stop Kong Ling, who had moved to pour more wine. This is a private feast. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Sir, please take a seat with us. Kong Ling was quick to react. He promptly bowed where he stood and sat down. Where does the good sir hail from? Shen Zichuan asked with a smile. The wheels in Kong Ling's mind turned faster. Seeing Xiao Chia starting to dig into his meal, he could tell the main negotiator tonight was Vice Commander Shen. He inclined his head and answered, Please, I don't deserve such an address. I'm merely a commoner from the countryside of Dongzhou. Dongzhou has no lack of talents. How should I address you? My name is Kong Ling, and my humble courtesy name is Chung Feng. Kong Ling sat upright and kept his eyes on Shen Zichuan as he said, Tantai Hu of the Imperial Army is the blood brother of a dear friend of mine, the late Tantai Long. To think one would run into an old friend in a foreign land. Shen Zichuan turned and threw Xiao Chia a smile. An, let's bring Lao Hu to meet with Mr. Chung Feng someday. Encountering a friend in turbulent times isn't something to take for granted. He addressed Xiao Chia as An. That alone was enough for Kong Ling to reevaluate his opinion of this orphan of Shenwei. Shen Zichuan had been rather inconspicuous when he entered Suzhou, save for his conspicuously good looks. Henry, Tantai Hu? I know for a fact I've made that joke before. I do hear it that way in my head sometimes. Kong Ling knew he was Shen Zichuan, the vice commander of the embroidered uniform guard, whom the Tianchun emperor had personally made an exception to promote. But after leaving Chudu, Shen Zichuan had lost that authority. As far as Kong Ling was concerned, he had no soldiers and no men. He was merely a vassal who had fled with Xiao Chia. A vassal, however, could never sit as equals at the table and address Xiao Chia by his courtesy name. Xiao Chia poured wine for himself. I'll leave it up to you. Zhou Gui cast a glance at Kong Ling, then looked back at Shen Zichuan. Kong Ling rose to offer him a toast. I've heard much about the vice commander. You are too kind, Shen Zichuan demurred. Please, sit. Let's talk over drinks. I'm just a minor clerk under His Excellency's command, Kong Ling responded. I wouldn't dare discuss official affairs with Vice Commander Shen. It's already a blessing for me to sit here with my cup of wine and listen to your counsel. The corners of Shen Zichuan's lips lifted. The good sir is truly too modest. I heard you used to be Tantai Long's advisor in Duanzhou. When the Biansha horsemen breached our borders, Tantai Long was in favor of fighting them head-on, and you were the one who devised all his battle strategies. These two had entered Suzhou scant hours ago, yet they'd already dug up everything about their hosts. Kong Ling's heart sank. I was merely an armchair strategist, dreaming on paper. It's a pity Tantai Long died at Shenwei's hands. Shen Zichuan drank his wine, and Duanzhou fell without a fight. Shen Zichuan said it so lightly, as if Duanzhou's fall was a house of cards that had collapsed. Nothing worth hating, nothing worth resenting. Kong Ling's expression gradually grew glum. It was several moments before he forced a smile. The vice commander has lived a life of luxury in Chudu. What would you know of the people suffering after Duanzhou fell? White bones left out in the sun, stretching for thousands of li from the Chasha River to Duanzhou. It wasn't only that Shenwei was a rat who shrank from battle. He set up a banquet with Shen Zhouji to strangle Tantai Long to death. The Zhongbo troops were defeated, while I, Kong Chung Feng, was fortunate enough to find a new master and live on. Most of Tantai Long's men were completely wiped out. You're right. It's a pity Tantai Long died at Shenwei's hands. He was a good man of Zhongbo. You had a narrow escape, Shen Zichuan said. With your talents and learning, You'd certainly come across a master who recognized your worth if you went to Chudu. Yet you remained in Suzhou. I don't understand. Kongling wanted to stand up, but knew it would be rude. He could only raise his head and look at Chen Zichuan. The vice commander doesn't understand. How could you understand? The calamity of war struck like a bolt from the blue and turned Zhongbo into a scene of utter devastation. There is neither fame nor fortune to be found here. In the vice commander's eyes, perhaps Zhongbo is like willow catkins scattered in the breeze, but to us, Zhongbo still has hope of getting back on its feet. Chen Zichuan smiled. Duanzhou lost its garrison troops, and a band of outlaws has proclaimed themselves king of the land. The fields there sit unplowed, and there's no sign of human life beyond half a mile outside the city. Does this hope of getting Zhongbo back on its feet extend to all 6 prefectures, or just Suzhou? On one side, Suzhou drags out an ignoble existence, subservient to Chudu, but on the other, it accedes to every one of Li Bei's requests. To be such a fence-sitter. Indeed, I don't understand. Now Kongling jolted to his feet. What would you know of Suzhou's difficulties? Chudu was so preoccupied with infighting after the fall of Zhongbo that we never received a response despite numerous memorials asking for help. It was His Excellency here who personally handled the reclamation of the fallow fields. This bumper harvest comes after 3 years of back-breaking work. You're right. Suzhou is stuck between Chudu and Li Bei, but we have always done our utmost to help each time Li Bei has faced difficulty. Vice Commander, isn't it a bit too harsh to say that Suzhou is a fence-sitter? It's as you've said. Chen Zichuan's expression shifted. He spoke unflinchingly. I know Suzhou has its own difficulties, so we've come for the specific purpose of discussing them with both of you. We'll come straight to the point. Your Excellency isn't willing to let the Imperial Army pass for fear of Chudu's censure. But considering how the situation has deteriorated, clinging to Chudu isn't the wisest strategy. Han Chung conspired to murder the Son of Heaven. Sa'an and I didn't leave Chudu to spare our necks, but to pick up the pieces. The Empress Dowager now controls the Imperial Court, and the noble clans have once again sealed off the main gate of Chudu. How long can the Imperial College thrive under these conditions? Wasn't it precisely due to Hua Siqian's dismissive attitude back then? When Your Excellency and Mr. Chung Feng submitted repeated memorials after Zhongbo's troops were defeated, that Zhongbo was robbed of any chance at recovery? Even in Chudu, I've heard about the bandits plaguing Zhongbo for years. Zhongbo will never stabilize as long as those bandits run free. How do you intend to advance your plans to restore Zhongbo to its former glory? The beginning of any undertaking is full of hardships, like a lone figure in rags driving a wooden cart, blazing a new trail through the mountains and forests. There's a footnote from Zuojuan, or the Commentary of Zuo, an adage that refers to enduring great hardships for the sake of pioneering work. Gentlemen, I admire your determination, but the road ahead is arduous, so why not change course and let Zhongbo handle its own affairs? Holding his wine in one hand, Zhou Gui held Kongling back with the other. Since the vice commander is speaking frankly, I won't beat around the bush either. It's indeed the case that I'm not willing to let his lordship pass. I worry Chudu will hold us responsible and punish Suzhou by increasing our taxes. If Suzhou disregards Chudu's orders and acts on its own, we will lose their support, and it will be that much harder for us to accomplish anything in the future. We have no military force, no wealthy merchants, and nowhere near the same level of confidence as Li Bei. The vice commander can be as persuasive as you like, but I cannot gamble with the lives of the common folk of Suzhou. On the contrary, Xiao Qia said, motioning for Kongling to sit. Lanzhou isn't trying to persuade Your Excellency to fight alone. Suzhou is close to the northeast provisions trail, and hasn't yet established a fully operational garrison. As long as your excellency is willing to allow my troops to come and go without obstruction, then, until the Cizhou garrison troops are reformed, my imperial army of 20,000 men will stand in for them and protect the city. Zhou Gui contemplated this in silence, but Kongling spoke up. I don't doubt that your lordship will keep your promise, but I have to ask you this. Now that Li Bei has revolted, the Northeast Provisions Trail will become obsolete. Where will military provisions for the Li Bei armored cavalry come from in the future? Cizhou? The Northeast Provisions Trail is a key route open for the specific purpose of transporting goods for the Li Bei armored cavalry. Wouldn't it be an awful pity for it to go to waste? Shen Zichuan fiddled with the wine cup, his eyes placid. The Li Bei armored cavalry and the Imperial Army together have 140,000 soldiers and horses. Military provisions must still pass through the Northeast Provisions Trail. Kongling exchanged a glance with Zhou Gui and blurted in astonishment. The Marquis has been charged with regicide. How would the 13 cities of Jueshi dare prepare military provisions for the Li Bei armored cavalry now? Shen Zichuan smiled. Jueshi is Jueshi. Chudu is Chudu. Mr. Chengfeng, since I dare to say such a thing, naturally I have the means to do it. How about it? As long as Lord Zhou agrees to let the Imperial Army pass through tonight, Cizhou will never fight alone again. Zhou Gui hesitated, but held his voice steady when he replied. I trust in his lordship's good word, but I don't trust the situation not to change. My lords keep saying the Imperial Army will suppress the bandits after passing through, but if you renege on your promise, Cizhou will truly have nowhere to turn. There's no hurry. Shen Zichuan set down his wine cup. I shall remain in Cizhou until the Imperial Army quashes the bandits. If your excellency needs more assurances, we can hand over our captive, Han Jin, to you. If we go back on our word, your excellency may use Han Jin's life to appease Chudu. Li Jianheng was dead, and there was no news from Chudu about a new ruler. The various regions were already beginning to show signs of restlessness. It was only out of fear of the Qi clan in Qidong that no one dared follow in the footsteps of Li Bei and raise their own banner. But Cizhou was different. It was in such close proximity to the Li Bei armored cavalry that if it could really obtain their military support, Cizhou could throw off the yoke of the noble clans. It won't be long before news of my entry into the city today makes it to Chudu, Xiaoqia continued, in no hurry. Whether your excellency lets me pass or not, the Empress Dowager will be wary of Cizhou after tonight. The color drained from Zhou Gui's face. Your lordship, your excellency, you... Besides, Shen Zichuan added mildly, right on Xiaoqia's heels, if the gentlemen wish to establish an operational Cizhou garrison troops, then the most pressing tasks are recruiting soldiers and purchasing horses. Cizhou relies on its cropland to make a living, and none of the businesses in or around Cizhou trade through Jueshi and its ports. It'll likely take you several years to amass the necessary funds with tax money alone. It just so happens I have some savings, and I'm willing to contribute what little I have. How about it, Prefect Zhou? Can the Imperial Army pass now? That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, Henry, boom and boom. 2 words from each of them and you're dead. Exactly. Exactly. That was beautiful. They really know how to change somebody's mind together. Goodness, what a stream. I really I really like that this stream was, we had just the, I don't know, triple whammy of of Monday's stream. It was very intense. It was very sad. This one was like, we're finally getting some wins. You know, like, it wasn't, well, part of it was quite fun. And then the rest of it, it wasn't like happy per se. We've still got Chen Zichuan being like, I gotta go. I can't go with you to Li Bei. And I've got feelings about that. But like, other than that, it was a lot lighter in tone, and it's just like they're working together, they're succeeding. Yeah, it was fun though, especially compared to Arha right now. That's a good point, Henry. The place that we're at in Brittany's Arha streams right now, it's just more depressing than anything I can imagine from these books. For how little happened, it was still so interesting. I guess, well, less happened than like last time, but I still feel like a lot kind of happened. Blue, the stream started shortly after I finished volume 5, so I'm also experiencing some whiplash. I'm suddenly in the past. Yeah, that must be a slightly odd feeling. But yes, Tong Jo Ching can write essentially a bunch of conversations and make me hang on to her every word. I agree. Sometimes when I'm reading, it's like I'm reading aloud, so I kind of get to a point where I zone out of what the content is and I miss a few things, which is why like I go back and read it again later. So I don't always like follow her conversations perfectly, but they're really captivating, even though it's just like it'll be like straight dialogue for pages. And I look at that and I'm like, oh God. And then I'm like, no, it's fine. I don't know how she does that. I still think her prose is so good when it's like the dialogue is so good, but her prose when it's not dialogue is so good. I almost like I do kind of want to see more of it. But I like both. Like both is good. Blue, I was trying to write down some quotes while we were reading, and I noticed that I either have nothing to quote for 2 chapters or I want to underline everything. I also feel like it's like that, because I do think it's a lot easier to take the quotes from the narrator prose than from the dialogue, just as far as like having a snappy quote. And so sometimes when you have like chapters of dialogue, it's like, well, I'm not going to find any of that here, but it's still very entertaining. Oh, I see what you mean, Henry. A lot happened, but it's not like there was a fight. I'm guessing you mean like a fight between Chen Zichuan and Xiao Jie, or a breakup moment, or any drama you would expect from a lesser writer to hold the reader's interest. Yes, like the way things that could go down with Chen Zichuan being like, I can't go with you to Li Bei, they could very easily, you could write it as like, they fight, they have a breakup moment, and then later they get closer together again. And she doesn't do that. And I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing, but it does feel like the cliche thing. So it's really interesting the way that she handles it instead. But yeah, last stream, all hell was breaking loose. I was like, I don't know what's happening. There's a coup. There's everything in the world is happening. Yes, Henry, like I was expecting a fight or a tearful goodbye, and it would not really have fit here. Yeah, I see what you mean. It's just, I don't know, Tong Jo Ching, it's like she writes these characters and she knows them really well. And like, of course, but you can't always say that for authors. Like, just everything they do, even when there's like a surprise, it feels fitting to their characters. And I mean, oh my God. The scene, I'm gonna immediately have to go back for quotes because I don't want to forget like the pages that stuff is on, because just the scene at the end of that one, goodness, what was it, in Treasure? The Treasure chapter, I think. It was just so It was, I'm going to be grabbing so many quotes from that. It was so beautiful, and I could totally understand it being somebody's favorite quote from the novel. I think, Anna, you said one of those lines was your favorite. Um, yeah, he wants to become Saon's indestructible shield. That one is really good. Um, yeah, like what a stream. It's it's very eventful even when the biggest things are not happening. Um, yeah, Blue, I thought I was gonna tear up. I was like, I feel close to it. I just gotta keep trucking. I never know what's gonna make me tear up and what isn't. It was like when I was reading Yuwu and I started crying over Meat Bun's like author's note at the end, and I was like, why is this the thing that did it? um, so I don't know when that's gonna happen to me. I'm sure it will at some point in the series. Um, so thank y'all for joining today. We have 2 more streams and then we're done. Um, like I said, they'll be a tiny bit shorter, but we'll just have more time to talk about whatever the heck is happening. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I will see y'all next week. And I will see some of y'all tomorrow in Brittany's stream. So have a good rest of your week. See ya.